Hello, everybody, and welcome to Atheist Sunday School, your one-stop shop for everything Atheist Sunday and school. And boy, do we have a show for you today. Today we are covering Isaiah chapters 40 through 43. And we have more books.
We have a lot of books here. So
I have the King James version of the Bible.
I have the English Standard version of the Bible.
We also have the Robert Alter version of the Hebrew Bible, a translation with commentary.
We have the Holy Scriptures according to some Jews and the New King James version. But we also have a lot of commentaries here, guys. I brought in a lot of stuff, quite a lot. Yes. So let's just get started here.
So we've got the Hermenia Commentary.
Yes, absolutely. Our handy-dandy Hermenia Commentary. This is on Deutero Isaiah. This is from Baltzer.
Baltzer, thank you for writing that.
We also have a commentary from Westerman on Isaiah 40 through 66. And yeah, we also have Erdman's commentary on the Bible. I'm not sure how much of that we're going to be using today because honestly, we have better stuff.
Yeah, we also have these other books on Isaiah.
Yes, we do. So we have this one we might use later once we get into the servant songs because the servant songs have been interpreted quite a lot to be about Jesus because, they're talking about this chosen one who is going to make the world this amazing place and pretty much save everybody.
But obviously they weren't actually talking about Jesus because they wouldn't have any historical reference to make. So here's where the Christians would come in and say, well, obviously they're being predictive. It's a prophecy coming from a prophet, right?
Right. I mean, the thing is, prophecies were usually written ex eventu, which means after the thing happened already. And that would be the only historical model we can go with. You can go ahead and believe that they are prophecies and they are about Jesus. You can believe that, but there's no historical model to support that because in history you can't examine those kinds of claims.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like the entire situation with Isaiah in Christianity is an unfortunate consequence of how Christians in general treat the Old Testament, where it's like, oh, this is a prologue to the Jesus story, right? This is just introductory stuff, and it builds up to Jesus.
Yeah, and there's quite a lot of, and it makes perfect sense, right? Because if you're a writer of the New Testament, or you wouldn't necessarily know you'd be writing the New Testament, but if you were one of the writers of any of the New Testament works, you'd probably be looking back at that sort of stuff when you are talking about your messianic figure, and that makes perfect sense. So this book is basically about how Isaiah was used in the New Testament. So we do have that whenever that comes up. We also have here now. This book is specifically on the servant songs. It's also specifically on Isaiah 53. This is called the Suffering Servant, Isaiah 53 in Jewish and Christian sources. And this will tell you pretty much, the views of people that, were around before the whole Jesus thing, how it was interpreted back then, and then later after Jesus came around.
Who are the authors on these two?
So Isaiah in the New Testament, the author, or it's one of those compilations of papers. So this one's edited by Steve Moisi and Martine J.J. Menken. I hope I definitely didn't pronounce all that right. Let's be honest here. And this one was written by, this is also a compilation of papers, Bernd Janowski and Peter Stuhlmacher.
Cool.
Yeah. So those are the books that we have at our disposal. Quite a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for Fitzgerald, we are breaking down Islam.
Yeah.
Have you read the Quran script?
I still gotta get to that, man.
Okay.
It should be read very soon.
So we have a Quran video that is in the process of being, filmed and edited, right? Basically. And we are then going to be going through the Quran. We've got 6 or 8 Qurans and commentaries.
Yeah, we do have quite a lot of them.
Yeah. So we'll be getting into that. But right now we're focusing on Isaiah.
Yeah.
Right. So anything, because we've finished first Isaiah, we're now going into second Isaiah. So what is characteristic of second Isaiah?
So one of the things, obviously, is that it's written later. It's post-exilic. And the reason we know this is because it does have references to Cyrus, the Persian king, who came and then pretty much saved the the Jews from exile. He was like, yeah, you guys can go back and you can read the stuff that is even recorded in the Bible about it. Yeah, I think it's in Ezra, right? I think Ezra had that whole thing.
Yeah, Ezra and Nehemiah, they come to this deal, an agreement, which allows them to fortify Jerusalem. They're literally allowed to build a wall and form an army, which doesn't make much sense.
Well, the thing is, Cyrus was fairly tolerant on that end. Mm-hmm. So they did like Cyrus. In fact, they even they put words in his mouth straight up. Now Cyrus would not have said, I've done this for the Lord Yahweh or the God of Israel, however it was put in Ezra.
Right.
So they definitely put words in his mouth, but they did like him because he freed him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
That is nice. So let's talk about some of this stuff. So one of the biggest things we're gonna get into is the servant texts and the servant songs. This is a recurrent theme, and the first text for the servant would come up in Isaiah 42, 1 through 9. Now, some of this kind of reads like kind of like a biography if you put it all together. Mm-hmm. What this, the appointment of this person, what's he going to do, how's he going to do it, all that stuff. And a lot of the language is kind of picks up the language from the Torah.
Yeah.
So once we get into it, I'm going to have this page ready. But I do want to point out that this author, Balzer, argues that second Isaiah is actually a, how did he put it? A liturgical drama. So it would have been performed in a way. And it also would have been, it would have been directly linked to the liturgy and, worship and, praise, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So he argues that that's the genre. Now, I do have quite a lot of stuff bookmarked here because, what? There's a lot of important stuff in here. So let me pull up this first one. I'll get to the date we already, we talked about a little bit in the first episode, and it's post-exilic. That's pretty much what you need to know. We're not going to, once we get to specific verses, we'll be talking about, some possible divisions and stuff.
Well, why else would you talk about Cyrus, right?
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things that I found very interesting was how the Persian world could have influenced this text. So specifically, the administration, kind of the use of their language. So on the Persian administration, Balzer notes, the emperor was the only one to claim the title of Lord, Ahura, of course. Call back to
Mazda.
Yeah, Ahura Mazda, yeah, of course. Below him, on the different feudal levels, his dependents were called Mana Bandaka. It was a relationship of mutual obligation. But the Greek interpretation rendered the concepts as despotes, lord, and doulos, slave or servant. So when we're talking about God's servant and God as Lord, perhaps it should be viewed through that kind of feudal, the feudal lens.
Well, every time we see the word servant in the Bible, like throughout Genesis, Exodus, etc., they're references to slaves, right?
Well, sure. But of course, this isn't a literal slave here. This could be more. It's on a different kind of spiritual level, I guess. it's not, the same kind of relationship.
There are servants of the Lord,
Mhm.
and they're not necessarily God's slaves.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, but they are literally required to do certain things and live in a certain way and eat certain things.
You could definitely point out the similarities, and I'm not going to argue against that.
And they don't
but
have like much of like when they were originally breaking down the tribes, right? It seems like, especially when they're talking about the Levites, there are
the Levites kind of got the short end of the
there are
stick
roles and responsibilities
They
that
didn't get half a stick.
like allocated to the individual tribes, where like you're born into this family and that means you will be living this way, you will be doing this kind of work. You don't have much of a say about it. So I mean, there is kind of a slave-esque relationship.
Slave-esque, sure. I definitely won't directly say that it's a slaver relationship, though. But it does share some parallels, sorry to say. And let's see, where's the other thing that I had? A little bit on the theology. Now, we've talked about the theology of the Bible a lot because, that's just kind of what we do.
Yeah, and it changes between books, which is why the theology here is relevant here.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before, where ancient Israelite religion, would have initially been polytheistic, and then it would have been henotheistic, meaning that they believed in a whole bunch of gods, but then only one was worthy of worship.
Yeah,
and
some of their offshoots, arguably later on, even pantheistic.
Yeah, and then eventually, after henotheism kind of faded away, it eventually became closer to modern day Judaism, and it was monotheistic now. So now there was only one God.
Which is strange because they didn't remove references to other gods from the text. I mean, sure, maybe at one point there were more references to other gods. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there are plenty of references to other gods, but you could interpret them as I guess polemics against those other gods, against the concepts of those other gods,
right?
Not necessarily
like that. What was it? Psalm 81,
82, I think.
82, where they're in the council of gods, right? That could be a polemic against other gods. It could also be like an old story.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. So there's quite a lot that goes into it, but
it's a hybrid of those a lot of the times, I think, where it's like a polemic about old things, then phrased to be against them.
Yeah, or sometimes they can just be described as useless, those other gods, and they're just idols. Ugh. Idols. Obviously a lot of terms are used to describe God. A lot of different epithets, right? Now, let's talk about, God being the one and only God, because this is kind of the hints of the Yahweh alone movement. Kind of that henotheistic framework. So, Deutero-Isaiah has the proclamation, "As King reigns, rules your God." This proclamation is addressed to Zion or Jerusalem in 52:7. We're not going to be getting to that today. He explicitly uses the title King for Yahweh. In 41:21, we'll get to that, and 43:15, we will also get to that. There's also another one. Of these instances, 41:21 belongs within the context of the fictitious legal battle with the gods, verse 23, "So that we know that you are gods." The outcome being, "See, you are less than nothingness, and what you do is less than naught, an abomination whoever chooses you." According to 43:15, Yahweh is Israel's king because he is its creator. He makes possible the exodus from Egypt as well as the new exodus. And we're going to get into that a bit.
Right. So that would be relevant at this time, especially given the presence of emperors who claim themselves to be gods. Right?
Or at least, like descendants of gods, or having some sort of intrinsic link
they
to
claim
gods.
a divine right to rule. And like around this period, I know that there were at least a couple of them in the region who were doing that. And so they obviously would have felt some social pressure. Right? So now their God can't just be a god. These other kings and emperors out there are gods, right? They're declaring themselves gods. So if your God isn't also a king or an emperor, then your God is lesser than they are.
Yeah. Let's see. Finally, in 44:6, Yahweh's uniqueness is proclaimed in solemn form. Thus says Yahweh, Israel's king and its redeemer, Yahweh Sabaoth, I am the first and I am the last, and besides me there are no gods. If we trace a line of development in Israel's faith, it may be seen to start from the commandment, you shall have no other gods besides me. This presupposes the existence of other gods. And, I just once again want to refer to Romer's, possibility of just it being referencing a Yahweh statue. This presupposes the existence of other gods, but rejects their worship where Israel is concerned. The prophet Jeremiah maintains that the other gods do not help. In Deutero-Isaiah, however, the very existence of the gods is denied. This is therefore a development from henotheism to monotheism. In Deutero-Isaiah, this development into the confession of faith Yahweh alone can still be seen in its polytheistic context. The experience of exile in a foreign country plays a part. It is the experience of the historical turn of events and of conferred salvation, liberation, and redemption. Deutero-Isaiah is able to discuss Yahweh's uniqueness theoretically too. The consequences of the concept begin to emerge. So, classic stuff there.
Great. Well, should we hop into it then?
You know what? I believe we can. I'm just opening up to a whole bunch of stuff.
Wonderful. Well then, let's get started. Chapter 40. Comfort ye, my people, saith your God. Speak ye comfortably to Jerusalem, and cry unto her that her warfare is accomplished, that her iniquity is pardoned, for she hath received of the Lord's hand double for all her sins.
So, this is actually kind of interesting. So, for her term of service is ended. The exile is imagined as a term of indentured servitude or even a prison sentence, which is now completed.
The voice of him that crieth in the wilderness, prepare ye the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be exalted, and every mountain and hill shall be made low, and the crooked shall be made straight, and the rough places plain. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. For the mouth of the Lord hath spoken it. So now they're referring to returning from exile, right?
So
that the path will be clear, and
yes, they are returning from exile.
Yes.
So quite a few things here on the kind of cryptic verse 3. So it introduces a new factor, a voice cries. So who's the voice is deliberately left unsaid. The prophet obviously intended to make the speaker hard to recognize, and this must be given due weight in exegesis. We may say that the one who calls and those whom he calls are invisible powers, and that was from one scholar, or we may discover an allusion to the heavenly court, and that actually comes up a little bit later. So I'm going to quickly flip here to Baltzer's, the Hermenia Commentary.
It also would probably be someone who wouldn't be considered a fool in the Psalms.
Oh,
sense,
yeah, it's definitely not.
Right? Because they're in the wilderness, but they remain steadfast in their faith.
So, voice of one who calls, by rendering it in this way, the accents given for the construct compound by the Masoretic text. The indefinite nature of the situation is retained. This is a stage direction because he views it as a liturgical drama. So he's putting in those terms. What follows is still proclaimed in the heavenly sphere. We may perhaps suppose that these words are spoken from behind the scenes. It is clear that what is said is no longer uttered directly by God himself. The highway is designed for our God, verse 3. The one who calls is probably one of the heavenly beings. And those heavenly beings, they I'm not sure if they would be the same ones that are referred to in Revelation.
Well, there are different kinds.
Well, kinds.
Yes, kinds.
Yeah. So there are different, whole lot of heavenly beings.
There's seraphim and cherubim.
That could be angels, or it could be
Nephilim, and
well, would you say those are heavenly?
Yeah.
they're of heavenly descent.
But they're not. But are they heavenly though?
Yep.
Yeah, they have angels.
I don't know about that.
About those
powers.
angels in the heavens of heavens who always praise to God
That's
constantly.
seraphim.
Oh, they're always like that?
Yeah, the seraphim have 6 wings, and they just sing, holy, holy, holy.
They sing it much better than that.
No.
I would assume.
I think
you don't know. You've never been
very
there.
good interpretation.
Maybe I have.
Maybe you have. You haven't. Because it doesn't exist.
Oh my god.
Because we're not secret crypto.
Oh yeah, we got that. Someone called us, or they thought that we were perhaps crypto Christians or spies.
What does that even mean?
Or one of us.
Yeah, damn spy.
I am a spy, but not a Christian spy, just a regular Russian communist spy.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Way to be called out.
Привет. What?
Да, привет, товарищ. Как ты узнал?
Yeah,
It means how did you know?
We're gonna do everything in Russian now.
Нет, пожалуйста, я не хочу это делать.
Yeah, no. Yeah. That's not happening. Anyway, the voice said, cry. And he said, what shall I cry? All flesh is grass, and all the goodliness thereof is as the flower of the field. The grass withereth, the flower fadeth, because the Spirit of the Lord bloweth upon it. Surely the people is grass.
So, the last note there, of course, before the show, we were reading over Westerman's commentary, and he noted that the last part, the people indeed is grass. That part, he noted that it was perhaps just a later a gloss, an amen gloss, as he called it.
An amen gloss.
Although yours said cry, although I just want to point out that it would be better if it was call, just a bit more clear.
Well, this isn't crying like sobbing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
This is like a town crier.
Yeah.
Like, extra, extra, hear all about it.
So grass dries
they
up,
can't
the
read.
flower fades. The fondness of this poet for evocative repetition is evident here. In this case, it amounts to an incremental repetition in which the increment is a strong antithesis to what has been repeated. But the word of the Lord our God stands forever.
The grass withereth, the flower fadeth, but the word of our God shall stand forever.
There it is.
Yes. O Zion, that bringest good tidings, get thee up into the high mountain. O Jerusalem, that bringeth good tidings, lift up thy voice with the strength, lift it up, be not afraid. Say unto the cities of Judah, behold!
Behold!
Oh.
Your God! Behold!
Behold!
The Lord God will come with strong hand.
Yeah, so see, my Lord Yahweh will come with strength.
and his arm shall rule for him. Behold!
Behold! This is a lot.
Yeah,
Seriously.
his regard is with him, and his work before him. He shall feed his flock like a shepherd. He shall gather the lambs with his arm, and carry them in his bosom, and shall gently lead those that are with young.
So the content of these verses is the message about the shepherd's triumphal procession. We may expect a carefully crafted construction, even if details, for example, the meter, cannot be determined with any certainty. The three smallest units correspond to the divisions of the verse. The recurrent threes in the rhyme, like the behold, for example. Yeah. See what we did there? The recurrent threes in the rhythm and structure of the poetry can be seen in the details too. For example, Zion, Jerusalem, and cities of Judah. Or the triple behold. He has triple C, but let's be fair here. It's behold. Okay, there's really no better way. It's behold.
Definitely behold.
Yeah. I don't even know that word.
What is it? How do you say it?
The assonances?
Let me see.
Are striking and correspond to the call.
Assonances.
Assonances?
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a weird way of saying assonance.
I'm going to guess.
Okay. Are striking and correspond to the call.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll continue then.
Go ahead.
Who hath measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, and meted out heaven with the span, and comprehended the dust of the earth in a measure, and weighed the mountains in scales, and the hills in a balance? Geologists. Who hath directed the Spirit of the Lord, or being his counselor, hath taught him? Arguably, Abraham counseled. With whom took he counsel, and who instructed him, and taught him in the path of judgment, and showed him knowledge, and showed to him the way of understanding? I guess that would be personified wisdom, who appears in the Song of Songs, who did that.
What? Sorry, what? Yes, but also what verse is that?
That was verse 14.
Verse 14. Okay, let me quickly hop to that one. The way they divide these verses in here for commentary is just so weird. Where
asinine.
Where the text
Assonance is similar vowel sounds.
Gotcha. Okay. Where the text we are considering is concerned, we may ask what the determining of the heavens, in the sense of measuring them, has to do with the directing of Yahweh's Spirit. In both cases, it is a matter of determining or directing destinies. The measuring out of the heavens is necessary if one wishes to calculate the position of the stars. The whole measuring of heaven, and even I think it's in Jeremiah and Ezekiel that motif pops up. I don't know if it's measuring heaven or they're measuring the temple. That motif is very important. Sometimes it could be understood as a measurement of how many worshipers there are, because it doesn't exactly line up with the measurements of the tabernacle, say. So maybe this has some...
Could also be a literal reference to, like, stars.
Yeah, according to Isaiah 47:13, Babylon has at its disposal the dividers of the heavens, as well as the watchers of the stars, who predict from month to month what will befall you. So, astrologers, basically.
Well, it could be, like...
it's another way of divining, so...
like, ridiculous.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
right?
this is also...
could be like, oh, well, who is capable of actually divining patterns from that much information? obviously God is, right? It could be a jab at like the divination methods of surrounding cultures.
Sure.
Right.
Because, dreams were okay.
Yeah, dreams,
At least, yeah, at least.
dreams were okay.
What are they called? Urim and Thummim?
Yeah, the Urim and Thummim.
Yeah.
And I guess drawing reeds, pick up sticks.
Of course.
Whatever.
Classic.
Like, who gets the short stick? That's a thing.
Yeah, Yahweh determines, and his spirit becomes efficacious. Verse 13. Yeah, verse 13 shows God's freedom and self-determination in his works. If human beings wish to make or fashion something, they need Yahweh's spirit.
Behold!
Behold!
Behold.
The nations are as a drop of a bucket, and are counted as the small dust of the balance. Behold!
Behold!
Behold.
Yeah,
He
again.
taketh up the isles as a very little thing.
Yeah, so in the progress of the drama, the third part of the chorus would enter at this point. Water, dust, powder, firewood. All these things are carried in receptacles of one kind or another and can be poured out. Afterward, all that remains clearly is a drop in the bucket.
He refers to the nations as the small dust of a balance, which would literally be something worthless, right?
Yeah, yeah. And also, this might be the part where we get into islands. We'll see.
Yeah, he taketh up the isles as a very little thing. But the islands appear in chapter 41 in the first verse. So.
Yes. So that could be a reference to the nations being stuff like Babylon and Assyria, while the isles would just be islands in the Mediterranean. So mostly Greece stuff.
Mm-hmm. All right. And Lebanon is not sufficient to burn, nor the beasts thereof sufficient for a burnt offering. All nations before him are as nothing, and they are counted to him less than nothing and vanity.
Oh, good old vanity returns.
Yep, Ecclesiastes.
Yep, the second of the two Hebrew terms, tohu, takes us back to the primordial chaos, tohu wabohu, before creation.
Mm-hmm.
But also, vanity. Gotta love Ecclesiastes. Okay, so someone on my Facebook posted, what's your favorite Bible verse? And I posted the opening to Ecclesiastes.
Yeah.
Because, come on, it's great.
And they were like, "Oh, you mean that part where it's like these are the words?"
No. I quoted the whole thing. I didn't want to take it out of context. So they deleted the post after that, or they just blocked me from it. I don't know.
That's funny.
Either way, I was like, "Damn," because the other comment it wasn't even a quotation of a Bible verse. It was just someone saying God is love and a whole bunch of other praise for God. But I'm like, that's not a Bible verse. Yeah. Like that whole thing that he said isn't a Bible verse. Nothing was in quotations. It just wasn't a Bible verse.
Right.
Time to make that a poll of ours. What's your favorite Bible verse, folks? And then we all put in Ecclesiastes, and that's the only option in the poll.
Or we could have three different ways of saying it. We could have like the first, I think it's the first. I think it's the second one.
Vanities.
We have the actual verse. Mm-hmm. We have the quotation of the verse, and then we have a description of where the verse is. Mm-hmm. So all three answers are the same.
Yep. And that was the poll, wasn't it fun? All hypothetical right there. All right.
Anyways, to whom then will ye liken God? Or what likeness will ye compare unto him? The workman melteth a graven image, and the goldsmith spreadeth it over with gold, and casteth silver chains. He that is so impoverished that he hath no obligation chooseth a tree that will not rot. He seeketh unto him a cunning workman to prepare a graven image that shall not be moved.
Sorry, what verse are you on?
20. I just finished.
Just finished 20.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, lots of stuff to talk about. So in verse 18, the theological point of departure is the assertion about God. Here, the name El is used for God, a term found in almost all Semitic languages. In the Ugaritic pantheon, for example, El is the head of the gods. And yeah, it's important to remember that when it does say El, it's not talking about the head of the Canaanite pantheon, because the word just became a generic term for God over time.
Right.
So it didn't have to be that specific, high God El.
Yeah.
Although, I got to remind people about the high place.
Yeah, the high place, once we hit a certain amount in donations every month in Patreon,
Yeah.
we'll be making our God show.
Yeah. A dramedy.
Dramedy.
Yeah. It's going to be really good. Either way. So anyways, yeah, El is the head of the gods. In the Old Testament, the term can have an archaic flavor, as it has, for example, in the Balaam oracles in Numbers 23 through 24. According to Ellinger, when it is used without an article, it is comparable with our word God. The name differs from the name Yahweh in that it already implies the claim that this is the only God, more even that the one so named is alone truly God. But it is striking that Deutero-Isaiah uses the term El for God, although incidentally only in chapters 40 through 46, particularly in passages where the point at issue is the dispute with foreign gods. So that's interesting.
So it's obviously a polemic against idolatry, but moreover, it gives reasoning, right? To whom then will ye liken God? You don't have a reference as to what God looks like, because God's capabilities are beyond human imagination, is the argument that's being built up.
Yeah. But what is the image or likeness of God? Ellinger may well be right when he says, likeness. He says likeness never means an image of God. But if we remember Genesis 1, and this reminiscence would seem indicated after the allusions in the preceding hymn, verses 12 through 17, then the human being is created to be like, or in the image of, God. Any other image, such as those usually set up in rows in the sanctuaries of the ancient world, infringes on the prohibition of images as it is formulated in the Decalogue, which would not have been an issue before there was a Decalogue.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the Ten Commandments for anyone that doesn't know. That's what the Decalogue is.
Yeah. So you hold
Means 10
to
words.
the position that there was a statue of Yahweh.
Yes.
Yeah. So in this context, where they're coming back from exile, after the point wherein the temple was sacked and everything gold was destroyed, which would include a golden statue of Yahweh.
And would have also included the Ark of the Covenant too, because remember that? Because that would have been...
there would be some wooden posts somewhere.
Yeah,
right?
that would have been, in my view, the statue of Yahweh. But even if it was, the Ark of the Covenant as shown in plenty drawings and paintings and all that stuff.
Indiana Jones.
Indiana Jones. Even if it was just like that, yeah, we even had a description of the destruction of all the gold stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So
back in Kings.
At this point, if there was a statue of Yahweh, it has been destroyed.
Yeah.
And they obviously have nothing other than that statue to base another statue off of. So maybe it's like a reassuring thing that despite not having this graven image, that it's not necessary, that the idea of the graven images in general is bad, which is what they were hinting at many times throughout Psalms, is that it's not just that it's wrong to worship foreign gods, it's that literally nothing comes from performing prayers to statues.
Yeah.
It's just useless.
Because they're just statues.
Yeah, they don't move. They don't, it's...
All right, we can continue.
Okay. Have ye not known? Have ye not heard? Hath it not been told you from the beginning? Have ye not understood from the foundations of the earth? It is he that sitteth upon the circle of the earth, and the inhabitants thereof are as grasshoppers.
So let's
that stretcheth out the heavens as a curtain, and spreadeth them out as a tent to dwell in.
Yes, so this is going to be talked about a lot. So if any of you are familiar with Kent Hovind, now he likes to do the whole stretching of the heavens thing a lot. He, because when people point out that the Big Bang happened, he's like, well, that same evidence can be explained by, when God stretched out the heavens. And that is an argument that is made. So let's talk about this stretching out of the heavens. This is some good stuff here. Here's what Alter has to say about it on the stretching out of the heavens. I'm going to talk a little bit about the circle of the earth too, because this verse I've seen to both support a flat earth and a globe earth from Christians, because a lot of people say that circles, a circle is flat, a plate is a circle, right? So ergo, the earth is flat. But then I've also seen Christians point to this verse and go, see, circle, it means a sphere. A ball is a circle. So I've seen it, heard it both ways, So let's, we're going to talk about all that. So he spreads out the heavens like gauze. That's what it says in Altars. This verse set and the next are reminiscent of the splendid depiction of grandeur of the Creator in Psalm 104. And that is actually all he says about that. Wow, thanks, Alter. So it says they spread like a tent to dwell in. Yeah, like a tent is.
So the idea is that the heavens are like a fabric or a sheet that is being manipulated in such a way that it's inhabitable, right?
Oh man, they're folding space-time already?
You said
crazy.
That was what, verse 22, right?
Yeah, 22.
Okay. So I'm going to start off here with the circle of the earth. So what the circle of the earth means in the present text, verse 22, is not entirely clear. According to Sebold, this is the notion of two horizon circles. He believes that this notion of two concentric circular coastlines, that of the Earth disk and that of the heavenly mountain islands, is directly evident in Babylonian cosmology, as reflected, for example, in the Sippar world. In the Sippar world map, 6th or 5th century BCE, with earlier prototypes, which is interesting. That's something who knows? I might just dig that up and post it if that's a thing that can be found.
Be curious.
Sippar world map. That's interesting. If one thinks in terms of a horizon, then an enthronement at the zenith would be conceivable. But I think it possible that here we already have a more developed form of astronomical assumptions. The circle of the earth could be the earth's equator. Job 22:14 and Sirach 43:12 talk about the circle of heaven. These two are hymnic, cosmological declarations. The two could fit together for the celestial equator. Yeah, the two could fit together. For the celestial equator is simply the projection of the Earth's equator into the heavenly sphere. This is then of interest if it is assumed that both seemingly turn a single axis that points to the north, the polar star. Man, I wish Lana was here. At the spring and autumn equinoxes, the sun rises at the point of intersection between the earthly and the celestial equator with the ecliptic. And thank you for the $20 or 20 Canadian, I guess.
What does that translate to?
I don't know. It doesn't matter.
I'm so confused.
But either way, thank you so much. Let's see. I appreciate the work you guys do. I have been binge watching all of your videos. Thank you for continuing this autopsy.
Yes.
Thank you. We really appreciate that.
Thank you a lot. Binge watch more. Encourage your family and friends to binge watch as well.
Yeah, you can't even recommend it, so use a URL you printed out and hand it to them, as we've said before.
Yeah. Now, I've been
Blacklisted.
toying with the idea of encouraging our viewers to get tattoos of our live streaming link.
Oh,
But,
wow.
You know,
That changes so frequently.
it does.
You got to get one of those advanced tattoos that's updated
And
frequently.
so this is actually kind of cool. Yeah, it translates to $15 or $15.16. Ragabash pointed out. Yeah, and we actually have it automatically changes it to USD.
Revenue, yeah.
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 That's neat.
But we do have a goal that we're trying to reach. Once we hit $666 in donations, we will be getting a Thetan meter. We'll be seeing who's the most clear. We'll be taking it apart and manipulating it, and we'll show you what Scientology is all about. So,
And we're also going to see who's the most clear, obviously.
oh yeah, obviously, it's not going to be Lawrence.
It's definitely not.
Watch it be Lawrence.
If it's me, I would be greatly surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about the stretching out is in verse what verse was the stretching out in?
The stretching out, the 22.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay, that's really weird. Does this not have a commentary on that? That's kind of a bummer.
It might not. What about Eerdmans?
I mean, Erdman's maybe. I'll check the other one. You can continue reading. I'll get back to you.
Okay. That bringeth the princes to nothing. He maketh the judges of the earth as vanity. Yea, they shall not be planted. Yea, they shall not be sown. Yea, their stock shall not take root in the earth. And he shall also blow upon them, and they shall wither, and the whirlwinds shall take them away as stubble. To whom then will ye liken me? Or shall I be equal? Saith the Holy One. Lift up your eyes on high, and behold!
Behold!
Who hath created these things that bringeth out their host by number? He calleth them all by names, by the greatness of his might, for that he is strong in power, not one faileth. Why sayest thou, O Jacob, and speakest, O Israel, my way is hid from the Lord, and my judgment is passed over from my God? Hast thou not known? Hast thou not heard that the everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, fainteth not, neither is weary? There is no searching of his understanding. He giveth power to the faint, and to them that have no might he increaseth strength. Even the youths shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fall. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. So, what are they talking about? The Levites here? They that wait upon the Lord?
Did you just finish the section?
I finished the chapter.
Okay.
So if you're enjoying the stream so far, give us a like, comment, share, subscribe, etc.
So the note here, shall run and shall attire. God's inexhaustible nature is transferred to those who wait or hope for him. If the prophet still has in mind his previous vision of a miraculous return to Zion, this idea here of a spectacular infusion of strength in the faithful would serve as a double function. It would link up the idea of a renewal of national strength after the crushing ordeal of the exile, and it could suggest that those marching over the long highway through the wilderness, which we got earlier, much earlier, beginning of the chapter, will not weary on the way. And I did find something here from Westerman on, thankfully. Thank you, Westerman.
Thank you, Westerman.
Yeah, on the stretching out. So the calling, and sometimes it's translated to like a curtain, It also has that translation.
Mm-hmm.
The calling of the world into being is the first subject of the latter part of the verse here, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain. After the questions designed to revive praise, all four sections in verses 12 through 31, in one way or another, strike up praise of the Creator. So I guess it's just, sadly, we don't have much. Here's some stuff for the word that's used, though. For that's sometimes used for a curtain, duk. Apparently, yeah, and also for stretching out, meta, are only found here. This suggests well-defined, distinctive traditions. We may take it that Deutero-Isaiah used the words to call to his hearers' minds a version of the praises of the Creator, which was still well known to him, even if we cannot find every word of it in the Psalms. Verse 22a is similar to Job 34:13b, and 22b corresponds to Psalm 104:2b. This is quite natural, since what the Psalter hands on to us is only a selection of Israel's praise. One thing, however, we can direct here is the structure of the praise. And then it goes into the structure. So it's just another praisal kind of thing.
Oh, great.
And they have a whole bunch of that. Anyways, I'm going to hand off some stuff to you.
Yeah, hand it over.
Yeah, there's there's quite a bit. I'm going to find the next section here. Here's the first one here. And I'm going to find the next section in here. Quite a lot, gentlemen and ladies also. Here you go. Oof. Good luck. I wish you the best. So everyone, wish Ruben good luck with all those commentaries.
Does seem like a lot.
With the wishes that you have.
Yeah.
Yep.
With your best wishes.
So, the speaker in this chapter is the Lord. And the setting is the heavenly court on the holy mountain, a part of the great autumnal festival, when the Lord appeared in the temple to judge his enemies and atone for the land.
Yeah, and I think there's
Deuteronomy 32:43.
Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be some more references to the autumnal or the festival nature.
So,
which we've already gotten a little bit of.
Yeah. Now this says that the section 41:1-5 opens the series of trial speeches in which Yahweh, the God of Israel, calls the islands and nations, etc., etc. So these are like trial speeches, according to this author, who is
Westerman. Yeah.
And 41:1-5a, according to the Hermenia Commentary, Balzer, can be viewed as a separate unit. So this section is one of the court scenes that occur.
Great. Let's look at the court scene.
Dramatic narrative.
Listen to me in silence, O coastlands. Let the people renew their strength. Let them approach. Then let them speak. Let us together draw near for judgment.
So, the second verse is scarcely a parallel member to the first verse of this line. The general scholarly hypothesis is that this is an inadvertent scribal duplication of 40:31a. It seems quite likely. Perhaps this was originally a triadic line, that is, be still for me, you coastlands, directly followed by let them draw near, and then together let us come.
Yeah, because 31a, but they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength.
Yeah, so this is a trial that's occurring. According to Alter, it's a trial between advocates of pagan gods and advocates of the one true God.
Classic. I love it.
And it's not that explicit until verses 21-24, but it runs throughout.
Yeah, because it looks like with the verses that you just mentioned there, 21-24, it becomes directly about idols.
Mm-hmm. Now, Eerdmans has a really interesting section on this verse.
Of course.
Right
is
here.
it about Enoch?
Not exactly.
Oh, okay.
He addresses the coastlands, one of many words in Deutero-Isaiah which seems to have another meaning. Coastlands and hyenas haunt ruins, Isaiah 13:22. Coastlands and wildcats haunt ruins, Isaiah 34:14. They are parallel to gods of the earth in Zeph 2:11. Zephaniah. And to the adversaries of the Lord in Isaiah 59:18. The word translated coastlands in Isaiah 41:1 seems to mean a hostile demon. The coastlands in verse 5, which we'll get to, are associated with idolatry. These lines in Isaiah were written too long ago for us to be certain exactly what the prophet had in mind, but it was not simply coastlands.
You should probably check the Hermenia commentary on that. I feel like that might be
reading.
Might be better.
I'm checking out the Hermenia Commentary, and the Hermenia Commentary
on the coastlands, yeah,
says about the coastlands. Well, first of all, the Hermenia says islands.
Okay.
And it doesn't seem
lands of the coast.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to say anything about it.
Well, I think if you continue on through it, it should. No? Okay.
No.
It's just that one section. That sucks. Okay. So listen to me in silence, O coastlands. Let the people renew their strength. Let them approach. Then let them speak. Let us together draw near for judgment. Who?
Go ahead.
Who stirred up one from the east, whom victory meets at every step?
So because of what's said in verse 4, this translation, Altars, understands the reference to be God, who has stirred up victory from the east, not to a king whom God is using as his instrument, but in all likelihood, the historical event in view is the conquest of the Medes by Cyrus II in the years leading up to Persia's capture of Babylon in 539 BCE. That imminent victory is something this prophet would have looked forward to eagerly.
That makes sense.
But also, Eerdman says the victor to the east may be a reference to Cyrus.
Yeah. It makes perfect sense that Cyrus.
The Targum of Isaiah thought the victor was Abraham. Not unreasonable in the light of Abraham's prominent new role in this period. A similar figure in verse 25 is also ambiguous, and the texts are confused in general.
He gives up nations before him so that he tramples kings underfoot. He makes them like dust with his sword, like driven stubble with his bow. So yeah, he completely annihilates them. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Cyrus was very good at these sort of things until he died in battle.
Yeah. The name of Cyrus isn't yet mentioned. Deutero-Isaiah avoids using it. Cyrus is named for the first time only in chapter 44, verse 28.
Sadly, we won't get there today, but his name will pop up. You'll see it next week.
Yeah.
Or hear it, whatever.
It's consistently generally about Cyrus.
Yeah.
Hermenia says, Balter says, if we look back, we are struck by the fact that at certain points it's not at all clear whether the text is talking about a real person or whether mythical elements are being used in a way of proclaiming Cyrus's importance. Such mythical elements might be the rising of the sun from the east at the beginning, and at the end, there's a remark that he doesn't touch the path with his feet. But these could be factual references to Cyrus's origins and a pointer to the rider. There are not mutually exclusive possibilities, but
he pursues them and passes on safely by paths his feet have not trod.
Right.
Who has performed and done this, calling the generations from the beginning? I, the Lord, the first, stand with the last. I am he. And you know, this, hand me hand me the Hermenia commentary.
Hermenia.
Yeah.
I know Alter comments here that this is a somewhat unusual characterization of God. It establishes an important theological theme for the whole prophecy. God has been present from the beginnings of history. Nations, caught up in their internecine struggles in what is no more than a fleeting historical moment, have by comparison no value or substance. Thus, God goes on to make the ringing declaration of the next line, I, the Lord, am the first, and as the last ones, it is I. That's interesting, though, given the amount of people who say things like, God bless the USA. Or like, oh yeah, I won sports ball game.
I love sports ball game.
Thank God.
That's not true.
Yeah.
I don't like sports ball game.
I'd like to think God,
So
nonsense like that.
I'm actually gonna need that for the next chapter. So I'll get it eventually, anyways.
Yeah, well, you were gonna get it for the next chapter.
Yeah, I know. My bad. But I did want to point out that the proclamation, for him being the Lord, is it's important because this kind of continues the theme of Yahweh alone. Either way,
tell me when you get to the end of verse 5.
Okay. The coastlands have seen and are afraid. The ends of the earth tremble. They have drawn near and come. So that is the end of verse 5. So how are the ends of the earth not only trembling? I assume that'd be the people. But yeah, so the ends of the earth are trembling, and they have drawn near and come. So everyone is going to one place. Is this Zion?
Well,
or actually, would it be Babylon?
Well,
for the
it's
exile?
being interpreted by Westerman
Okay.
as the point here at issue is the claim to divinity made by both the gods of foreign nations and by Yahweh, the God of Israel. A claim which, of course, could only be validly made by one of them. Deutero-Isaiah here avails himself
not really.
Right. Of the form used in pleadings. This allows him to say two things. First, that the foreign gods claim to divinity and therefore to worship, as will appear later. He was thinking primarily of the gods of Babylon, can be declared invalid by judicial means, that is, by means of impartial arguments, which both sides are bound to accept. And secondly, that it is perfectly possible for such a legal contest or lawsuit to be held, which means that Yahweh recognizes the foreign gods as a body corporate, and that they can perfectly well be summoned and speak. Thus, the background of this literary form is not the criminal case, which has to do with an offense and its punishment, but the civil case, which turns on a claim and its admission or dismissal. Deutero-Isaiah has thus created a new literary form, and by means of it, he says to his people what they had never previously heard put this way. The form came into being because of the position in which the exiles were placed in Babylon. For their daily life, the Babylonian Empire was an imposing and undeniable reality, and they knew that its nerve center was its cult, with its invocation of the gods, its sacrifices and processions. In such a situation, the question of which claim to divinity was true and who was, in fact, God was inevitable. Right? So they're saying that this is like a trial. This is the opening of a trial where it's other gods that are being referenced.
Gotcha. Everyone helps his neighbor and says to his brother, "Be strong!" The craftsman strengthens the goldsmith, and he who smooths with the hammer, him who strikes the anvil, saying, yes, sorry, this is a really weird verse. So the craftsman strengthens the goldsmith, and he who smooths with the hammer, him who strikes the anvil. How does Altar translate verse
Altar
7.
says, each man helps his fellow, and his brother says, be strong. And the craftsman strengthens the smith, the hammer wielder, the anvil pounder. He says to the glue, it's good, and strengthens it with nails that it not totter. Altar says the evocation of the enterprise of idol manufacturing in this verse and the next seems out of place. And it's plausible that these lines were scribally misplaced from 40:18 through 20. These verses, therefore, are enclosed with brackets in Altar's version.
Okay. That does make a lot more sense that they're talking about idols here. So yeah, saying of the soldering, it is good, and they strengthen it with nails so that it cannot be moved. But you, Israel, my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, the offspring of Abraham, my friend. Oh, yeah, that's right. Abraham gets called a
friend of God.
Yeah.
Which he was recorded as being in Jubilees in the heavenly tablets.
Yep. You whom I took from the ends of the earth and called from its farthest corners, saying to you, you are my servant. I have chosen you and not cast you off.
So Abraham was called by God to make his way from Mesopotamia to Canaan. The prophet envisages a similar trajectory for the descendants of Abraham exiled to Mesopotamia.
And corners of the earth is used a lot. Now, it just means far and wide, right? But when... And this is usually something I see from atheists where they're like, it says, see the corners of the earth. The earth doesn't have corners. See, your Bible's a lie. And it's like, it just means far and wide, man. It just means from like
it's
all
an
around.
Expression from the time.
Yeah, like.
And it's an expression from the time because they did envision the earth as being flat and usually with corners.
Well, corners, I'm not so sure. But
sometimes.
With flat, yeah, it definitely happened a lot. Yeah, also cardinal directions. Yeah, it's but it's definitely not. It doesn't mean that. Yeah, it just means for everywhere. Just that's all it means. Either way, fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. And of course, the right hand there being important again, because if we take into account the imagery from Daniel, the righteous one will be sitting at God's right hand. So his righteous right hand makes sense there.
Mm-hmm.
Behold!
Behold!
All who are incensed against you shall be put to shame and confounded. Those who strive against you shall be as nothing and shall perish. You shall seek those who contend with you, but you shall not find them. Those who war against you shall be as nothing at all. For I, the Lord your God, hold your right hand. It is I who says to you, fear not, I am the one who helps you.
So he gives this cry.
Yeah. There's quite a lot going on here. This kind of plays off the imagery from the last chapter, right? About them being destroyed into nothingness.
Yeah, so the central idea is like, don't be afraid because God's on your side.
Right.
But they make references here. So starting with verse 10, so then they say, fear not. I'm trying to pick up, Westerman. I'm trying to pick up a good space to jump in here.
Yeah.
But so he says, what evokes the fear is the threat or danger that inspires the lament. The clearest and most detailed instance of fear evoked by simply the manifestation of the divine being comes in Daniel. Genesis, something similar happens. The cry in Deutero-Isaiah has very close affinities with those passages in which, in the context of Yahweh as the man of war, The same cry is spoken to in Israel threatened by enemies. Similarly, a prayer of Assurbanipal to Nabu, an instance from the world outside Israel, clearly sets forth the circumstances of an oracle of salvation and its basic structure. Quote, kneeling, Assurbanipal squats back his hunches, bows again and again to his lord Nabu, blah, blah, blah. So the cry's first substantiation is given in 2 noun clauses. I am with you, I am your God. These 2 assurances either come into operation at the moment the pledge is made, or else the pledge gives them effect. The first, I am with you, has a long prehistory outside Israel as well as within it. We find it mainly in the Joseph stories. In Deuteronomy 21, 31:8, Jeremiah 42:11, 1:7, so on and so on, it's united with the cry, fear not. The second substantiation, I am your God, is particularly characteristic of Deutero-Isaiah. To meet the needs of the time, it summarizes what the appositions in the address had said about God's dealings in the past with his people. Deutero-Isaiah's choice of it was probably quite deliberate. He wanted to counter a God self-prediction occurring in the same way in the Babylonian cult. For example, quote, I am Ishtar, the goddess of the evening. I am Ishtar, the goddess of the morning. Ishtar, who opens the shutters in resplendent heavens. This is my glory. I make the heavens grow dark. I convulse the earth. This is my glory. This form is also found with the cry, fear not. I am Ishtar of Arbela. Fear me not. Extol me.
And there's a interesting play on that kind of form that's coming up.
Mm-hmm. So this, I mean, the whole chapter, the incident that's being described here is like a trial of these foreign gods. So it's interesting that they would have kind of more direct reference, kind of like their literary forms are being cucked in a way. Like, well, we're just going to take these attributes from your gods.
Well, not attributes necessarily, but it's definitely, I mean, the literary form is just, a way of presenting information, but it would make sense. It would be an interesting polemic because they have used their literary forms against them in a way.
Right. And it's something that I go into in the Quran script where I talk about how the Quran explicitly says that it's not poetry, even though it's rhyming verse. It follows a rhythm. And it's most likely because there were popular forms of poetry that were used by people who adhered to specific religious cults. So you might see, like, I don't know, this isn't a real example, iambic pentameter being used exclusively by Ethiopian Jews, right? And that would be like how they deliver prophecies and such. So you want to distance yourself usually from the literary forms that other people use. Whereas in this instance, it's the exact opposite. They're appropriating the literary forms for their own use.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think, initially the Babylonians would have had any issues with that. Because it's just like, hey, they're becoming part of our culture now. So
right,
what's the big deal? Either way, let's continue here. Fear not, you worm, Jacob, you men of Israel. You worm, Jacob? Worm, it says worm.
Verse 14?
Yes, verse 14.
Okay, so verse 14, worm of Jacob. This ostensibly insulting designation is used to represent Israel in defeat and exile as lowly and downtrodden.
Yeah, that makes sense because the Jews did kind of view themselves, not even the Jews, the Israelites, whatever you want to call them. You'd be hard pressed to call them Jews at this point. They would have been, throughout this entire book, throughout the entire Bible, how many times do we see the idea that the exile, and for that matter, a lot of destruction that is a lot of persecution, a lot of oppression that has befallen the Jews, the Israelites, they have viewed it as their own fault. Like, it is because of their sins that it is this way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it comes up a lot.
Well, a worm categorically within the Bible is a creeping thing, right?
Sure.
That's its kind, and those are generally seen as impure, like not fit for sacrifice.
Sure.
And so when he refers to Jacob or Israel as a worm, he's saying that they are spiritually unclean, right? So maybe this ties into, I think it was in Ezra and Nehemiah, when they get back to the second temple and then they have to purify the bricks all over again because it's spiritually
I think that was
unclean.
Nehemiah,
Yeah.
All right. Let's see here. I am the one who helps you, declares the Lord. Your Redeemer is the Holy One of Israel. Behold!
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 I make of you a threshing sledge, new, sharp, and having teeth. Ooh, interesting. Okay.
Look, I have made you a threshing board, a new one with double edges. The Hebrew term is commonly
not
used,
having teeth.
It's commonly used to characterize a double-edged sword.
Okay.
A sickle-shaped sword with only one cutting edge was more common, and so this word turns the threshing board into a weapon.
Ah, nice. You shall thresh the mountains and crush them, and you shall make the hills like chaff. You shall winnow them, and the wind shall carry them away, and the tempest shall scatter them, and you shall rejoice in the Lord, in the Holy One of Israel you shall glory.
So, this threshing, there can be no doubt that Israel and its kings threshed other peoples. Nevertheless, among the crimes against humanity listed in the sayings against foreign nations, Amos also names threshing with the threshing sledges of iron.
Yeah, and just to be clear here, Amos is probably like one of, if not the oldest book in the Bible.
Mm-hmm. And that's the most interesting bit about that.
Yeah.
It seems like contradictory here.
When the poor and needy seek water, and there is none, and their tongue is parched with thirst, I, the Lord, will answer them. I, the God of Israel, will not forsake them. I will... Go ahead.
The verse that's too long, metrically, it has 5 accents where the general limit is 4. So it seems likely that one of the two synonyms, the poor and needy, is a scribal interpolation.
I will open rivers on the bare heights and mountains in the midst of valleys. I will make the wilderness a pool of water and the dry land springs of water. I will put the wilderness in the wilderness the cedar, the acacia, the myrtle, and the olive.
So I will
hold on, I'm going to finish this section.
Okay.
I will set in the desert the cypress, the plane, and the pine together, that they may see and know, may consider and understand together, that the hand of the Lord has done this. The Holy One of Israel has created it.
What verse was that?
That section?
What verse did you just finish?
Verse 20.
Verse 20. Okay.
Because this also kind of seems like a reversal of roles kind of thing, but this is more of like in the nature setting.
Yeah, so the botanical items are a matter of guesswork, and they talk about the kinds of trees. There's just a few little bits here. They talk about the rivers on the peaks.
Yeah.
So the desert landscape envisioned here that it's about to be transformed into a garden is probably not the wilderness to be crossed on the return to Zion, but rather the land of Judah itself, devastated by the Babylonian conquerors, then at least partially left uncultivated because much of the population was exiled. This river on the heights, There's no fear not that appears here. It's a proclamation of salvation. The structure of the present proclamation is as follows. 1, an allusion to the lament. 2, the proclamation of salvation, where God's turning towards Israel and his intervention take place. 3, the end in view. Further texts where the structure is similar are 42:14 through 17, 43:16 through 21, 45:14 through 17, 49:17 through 20. It's more often found in combination with other forms and motifs. So that's what we're getting at.
So continuing on here.
Yeah.
This is now we're talking about other gods and idols again.
Mm-hmm.
Set forth your case, says the Lord. There's the trial. Bring your proofs, says the King of Jacob. Let them bring them, and tell us what is to happen. Tell us the former things, what they are, that we may consider them, that we may know their outcome, or declare to us the things to come. So here's the first test,
Yeah,
right?
It's a sarcastic remark, a jibe directed at the false prophets. If you really have the gift of prophecy, tell us what the future will be.
Yeah.
Right.
And, let's just point out that God was giving people false prophecies as well.
And there's also legal terms that occur throughout. So it adds to the trial atmosphere.
Yeah. Tell us what is to come hereafter, that we may know that you are gods. Do good or do harm, that we may be dismayed and terrified. So, yeah, just show your power.
Yeah.
Good or bad, I don't care. Just do something.
The gods
do a trick.
Give some sign of life to make us able to feel dismay.
Do a barrel roll.
Amid all the splendor of the Babylonian pantheon, what a superiority complex grips the exiled prophet.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Yahweh is supposed to be like way more powerful than Babylon's gods.
Yeah,
here.
absolutely.
So,
Behold! You are nothing, and your work is less than nothing. An abomination is he who chooses you.
So we return to that same thing.
Yeah.
You are nothing, your work is less than nothing. Like,
yeah,
when he was referring to the nations earlier, well, the nations being the enemies of Israel, right? They're less than nothing. And now these gods, who are the heads of those nations, at least in the metaphysical sense, that's also the wrong way to use the word metaphysical. But these other gods are also less than nothing.
Yeah. I stirred up one from the north, and he has come, and from the rising of the sun, and he shall call upon my name. He shall trample on rulers as on mortar, as the potter treads clay. So one from the north, but also one from the rising.
Yep. The new prophecy introduces a set of more strictly historical references. The Persian army threatening Babylonia in the 6th decade of the 6th century BCE was advancing from the north.
Okay.
He in question is Cyrus II, the Persian emperor. And so...
Yeah, and he shall call upon my name. That's a good old Ezra thing thrown in there.
Yeah,
Even
so there's a bunch of passages in Isaiah and Jeremiah and elsewhere where they have practically the same meaning. Yahweh rouses or stirs up a nation or a king destined to destroy Babylon. And 3 of the 4 that he lists here, proclamation, is put in the mouth of Yahweh himself. All are exilic prophecies of unknown origin. During the exile, then, either in Palestine or among sections of the exiles, there were proclamations against Babylon in God's name, with the recurring catchword, I stir up so-and-so against Babylon. They have salvation surviving the downfall of 586 in such sayings as these. This, however, implies that such a proclamation of the stirring up of a conqueror must be older than 586. I will stir up is in fact found in the prophecy of doom, although in this case it is in fact found, it is the stirring up of an enemy of Israel, as for example in Ezekiel 23:22 and in narratives in 1 Chronicles, 2 Chronicles. In such instances, the verb denotes an action on Yahweh's part that causes the approach of a foreign nation or a foreign king.
Who declared it from the beginning that we might know, and beforehand that we might say, he is right? There was none who declared it, none who proclaimed, none who heard your words.
So this returns to the challenge that was put forward to the pagan gods earlier in the chapter. Which is if you predict things and they come true. Well, that also in, I think it was in Deuteronomy, was used as the standard by which you could tell whether a prophet is legitimate or not, whether their predictions come true. And if not, then their ideas aren't coming from the Lord and they should be put to death.
That's right. Yeah.
False prophet.
Was that Deuteronomy?
Yep.
I think it was Deuteronomy. It might have been Leviticus. I'm not sure.
Okay. Let's continue. I was the first to say to Zion, behold, here they are.
Behold, here they are.
And I give to Jerusalem a herald of good news, everyone.
Good news, everyone.
But when I look, there is no one. Among these there is no counselor, who, when I ask, gives an answer. Behold! They are all a delusion. Their works are nothing. Their metal images are empty wind. So, yeah, it's the same kind of stuff from before. They keep failing the tests. You want to know why? Because they don't exist.
Yep. And that's the
Who answers me? Nobody. All the believers are delusional.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, that is the end of chapter 41. And if you guys are enjoying the stream so far, drop a like, subscribe if you haven't, because it really does help us out dropping a like, because it gets all those interactions.
Those interactive juices flowing.
Yeah.
I will.
Oh, do you?
Well,
hear
I will first
something?
point out that I like Alter's wording here. Their deeds are nothing, mere wind and void, their idols.
Behold, I am your Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and I want to let all you heathens and sinners know that I support this wonderful episode of Atheist Sunday School. Lawrence and Reuben try their very best to bring you the true glory of the Bible, and they need your help. They have provided links to their Patreon page and other social media just for you. Once again, my name is Jesus Christ, and this is Milwaukee Atheists. The Lord is with them. God bless.
Wow, Jesus, thank you. Oh, Jesus, what a guy. What a guy, always helping us out and having our backs and stuff. And you know what? Jesus, we're going to talk about you a little bit because, well, maybe we will, maybe we won't. I guess we'll see. But we're going to be talking about the servant songs now, or at least the first servant song. And before we hop into it, I am going to read a little bit here from Westerman's commentary on the servant song. So 42, 1-4, give the first so-called servant song. This generally accepted designation is retained here, although the poems are not properly songs. While the passages concerned, then he goes on to list all the servant songs, would be better taken and commented on as forming a group by themselves, they will here be treated as they occur in the text. The structure of this first song is very clear and concise. The keynote of it all is given in the first two words, behold my servant, or this is my servant. These in themselves epitomize the servant described throughout. God, oh, wow! You have returned!
Is the servant suffering?
Are you the servant?
No.
Oh.
I
Man,
am
that's sad.
the Son of Man.
What? You mean you're a human?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know,
Me too. I am also the Son
what
of
did
Man.
you expect?
One of those.
Yep.
So welcome back from wherever you went.
Yeah, I went to the bathroom.
Oh.
I'm gonna lie.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna make up a big story about it.
So the song is the designation of God's servant. Clear and concise though the song is, its interpretation is very difficult. On 3 matters, we are left in the dark. Who is the servant here designated by God for a task? What is the nature of the task? And what is in what context is the designation made? On principle, and talking about all these questions. On principle, their exegesis must not be controlled by the question, who is the servant of God? Instead, we must do them justice by recognizing that precisely this is what they neither tell nor intend to tell us. The questions which should control exegesis are, what do the texts make known about what transpires or is to transpire between God, the servant, and those to whom his task pertains?
So I'm gonna have a wild guess at who this servant is, and you're gonna tell me how accurate I am.
Okay.
I'm gonna guess that originally there were no chapter divisions here, and that the way that the narrative flows is referring to Cyrus still. He was just referring to Cyrus, and now at the beginning of this chapter, which I'll start, behold,
Behold.
my servant whom I uphold, mine elect in whom my soul delighteth. I have put my spirit upon him. He shall bring forth judgment to the Gentiles.
Yeah, about Cyrus. So this is the first of the servant texts. So the biography begins, because if you put them all together, you can pretty much read them as a biography. So the biography begins with the installation. God himself appoints his servant, thus directly legitimating him. God's people and the foreign nations are the servant's sphere of responsibility. He has judicial functions. He sees to it that the rule of law is maintained. The proper hearing of cases and the liberation of prisoners are cited as specific examples. We'll get to that in a bit. Although, let's talk about some of this stuff just a little bit more, shall we?
So why would they be clearly referring to Cyrus when originally there were no chapter breaks, and then suddenly referring to someone else?
Well,
it doesn't make any narrative sense.
So let's there's quite a lot of stuff here about who this could possibly be. There have been a lot of people suggested over time. Hezekiah was a popular suggestion. Of course, the most popular suggestion is Jesus,
Of course.
but that's just by sheer numbers alone. So if we look more closely, we discover that the servant texts are more intimately bound into their context than often is assumed. This again has to do with the dramatic structure of Isaiah 40 through 55. The texts are already announced in the prologue, 40:14. It may be useful to go through the text once more from the angle of the drama's action. The servant of God appears. Yahweh himself presents him. Look there, my servant whom I uphold. We therefore have to imagine the servant as being present, although he himself does not speak. The content of the scene perhaps also embodies, perhaps also the emblems used, clothes, etc., tell the audience that the Moses who had once departed is now present. So the thing that's being held up here is that Moses is the person that we're talking about. So
where's Moses? I don't see any reference to Moses.
Yeah, let's talk about this.
Yeah, so I see later on there's a reference to bruised reed. I guess that could be an Egyptian reference, but
this is the argument that is being made by Balzer here. The servant's installation begins with a hymnal a hymnal prediction of God. This picks up Genesis 1 through 2, the beginning of the Torah. The catchwords from Genesis 1 are clearly evident. Create, heaven, firmament, earth, bring forth. Exodus 3 records the appointment of Moses. The heart of the text is the revelation of the divine name. Isaiah 42:8 takes this up. I am Yahweh, that is my name. In addition, the charge to bring out, which occurs 3 times in Exodus 3:10, 11, and 12, is also given in thrice varied form in Isaiah 42:1, 3, and 7.
Mhm.
So that's the first connection there.
Well,
And-
Moses wasn't, Moses was a warlord, but Moses wasn't a warlord trying to bring forth judgment on the Gentiles. He was trying to travel from one place to another, and people who wouldn't let him peaceably pass through, he went to war with.
Well, you also, I'm sure, remember what happened.
Then there was Joshua.
Well, you
Right.
remember what happened with the golden calf, right? Like right afterwards.
Yeah.
What did he do?
Well, he throws down his things, and he's like, I'm so upset.
No, but the people who were on Moses' side, he tells them to go kill the worshipers of the calf.
Yeah.
Brother against brother. Yeah.
Well, he also has a bunch of them killed with fire in an earthquake, okay?
Yeah, that
So-
is, yeah. That did happen. Although I'm going to talk about this a little bit more here. So this survey, and he goes over all the sections
Mhm.
alone. So this survey shows that the 4 servant texts are a reflection on 4 stages in the life of Moses, the servant of God. 2 of them taken from the book of Exodus, the installation and at the burning bush, the revelation of the commandments on Sinai. 2 of them references to Deuteronomy, Moses the teacher and Moses' death. In its binding together of these traditions too, Deutero-Isaiah's work is a unifying document. The elimination of Moses' name is explained in 48:19. It was the consequence of Israel's disobedience, its failure to keep the commandments. His name would not have been wiped out nor destroyed before me. This is probably an interpretation of Exodus 32:32, the story of the golden calf. In Deutero-Isaiah's work as a whole, all names eventually disappear, from Jacob or Israel to Cyrus right down to Zion and Jerusalem. It is Yahweh's name alone that stands.
Mhm. Wow.
So that's the argument there.
Yeah, as I'm reading through it, I don't really see anything characteristically Mosaic.
Yeah.
I guess that's how you say it.
No, I mean, yeah, the Mosaic would work.
Yeah. So it goes, he shall not cry, nor lift up, nor cause his voice to be heard in the street. Like, and then it says, a bruised reed shall he not break, and the smoking flax shall he not quench. He shall bring forth judgment unto truth. He shall not fail, nor be discouraged, till he has set judgment in the earth, and the isles shall wait for his law. Well, I just don't see this as Moses, right? Moses,
For his law would work there too for both.
right. So let's see the qualifiers that we have so far, right? First, God puts his spirit upon him. Second, he judges Gentiles. 3, he doesn't cry or lift up or cause his voice to be heard. Now,
How would one judge Gentiles? By what standard?
yeah, he also doesn't
A gentle
break
standard.
No.
things. He doesn't quench fires. He just judges truth, and he's never discouraged. Moses definitely, despite saying, oh, I'm so uneloquent or whatever, he definitely had his voice heard. He definitely had an uprising that occurred because of him. He definitely fought against the Egyptians and, very definitively broke a bruised reed in destroying Pharaoh's army. He also was discouraged throughout his journey.
Quite a lot.
Yeah. So this is not Moses.
As far as I could tell, yeah, I don't think so either.
Well, there's quite a detailed argument here, so I'm gonna get into
What's
it a
the
little
argument?
bit. So I'm just hopping up to the important stuff.
Mhm.
So the exegesis of this must take account of the text's special character and its place in the context. It is preceded by a court scene in the heavenly sphere, a lawsuit, pretty much a lawsuit, between God and the gods. The subject of the dispute is the ability to predict. Isaiah 41:25-27 deals specifically with the announcement of Cyrus, although his name is not yet mentioned. At the end, in verse 28, heaven is empty. The conclusion is that the gods are futile. This is balanced by the hymn in verse 10, which extols Yahweh as Lord over the whole world. Verses 1 through 9 describe a presentation or installation. God himself installs his servant. A comparison with other texts shows that in genre, this is closely related to the installation accounts of prophets, especially. The twofold division of the text may be connected with the requirements of the genre. Verses 1 through 4 comprise the presentation and calling of the servant. Its place, according to the form, should be the council of the heavenly household. But what is possible in Job 1:6 through 12, and Yahweh said to Satan, "Have you not seen your heart? Have you not seen set your heart on my servant Job?" And what can still be detected in Isaiah 6 at Isaiah's installation is expressly excluded in this Deutero-Isaiah text by the immediately preceding verse, 41:28. But there is no counselor. Mm-hmm. The whole emphasis lies on Yahweh's own resolve. In Deutero-Isaiah, only title and function are named. Verses 5 through 7 bring the actual installation, with the direct address to the servant. This address is mediated through a spokesman. It delineates the servant's sphere of competence, both for the people and for the foreign nations. According to verse 7, the special instructions he receives are to open blind eyes and to lead prisoners out of prison. Mm-hmm. A series of catchwords points to the servant's function in the sphere of justice and its administration. But if this is an installation, it will be permissible to ask, who is the servant? Mm-hmm. This question has indeed been asked continually. The one appointed is never named. This is not entirely unusual. And then he lists out why it's not entirely unusual. One of the earliest interpretations of the text, the Septuagint, interpolates the name Israel after my servant in verse 1, and Jacob after my chosen one. But that would mean that this is a doublet of the installation of Israel and Jacob as servant in 41:8-16. Mm-hmm. If there are two installation accounts, it would seem obvious to assume that two different servants are being appointed. But if Jacob or Israel in verse 41:15 is the first servant, who is the second? The question can be posed in this form if one assumes that in Deutero-Isaiah we have a continuous, uninterrupted action. 41:8 also suggests a sequence. Israel, Jacob is the seed or descendant of Abraham, my friend. Who comes then? I would think it likely that the name expected is Moses. The reason for omitting his name are, I believe, theological ones. Of course, we just went over, and his name was blotted. If it wouldn't have been for this, his name would not have been taken out. Mm-hmm. Right? Okay. So I'm going to skip over that section. Deutero-Isaiah himself probably gives one of the reasons. Yeah, that's that one.
Yeah, no, I totally disagree. I don't think that this is describing Moses at all, even vaguely.
I mean, I can continue.
Yeah. I think that the details that are on the page are directly contradictory to the story and character of Moses. And given that no one else is named, I think it's really grasping at straws to try and say, oh, well, his name's not there.
I find it to be vague enough that it could fit the role for too many things, and therefore I wouldn't immediately attribute any of those specific things to Moses.
I mean,
I'd say rather
that's just my argument.
Maybe the interpretation of Israel as the servant is better, because if Israel is the servant, it's not like an individual. We're not talking about the dude Israel. We're talking about like the community,
the nation, yeah,
the nation which serves him, and it's just referring to it as an individual, right?
Sure.
Should I keep going, or
I mean, yeah, you can go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Thus saith God the Lord, he that created the heavens and stretched them out, he that spread forth the earth and that which come out of it, he that giveth breath unto the people upon it, and spirit to them that walk therein. I am the Lord that have called thee in righteousness, and I will hold thine hand, and will keep thee, and give thee for a covenant of the people, for a light of the Gentiles, to open the blind eyes, to bring out the prisoners from prison, and them that sit in darkness out of the prison house. I'm sure Eerdmans right now is talking about the Watchers.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah. These prisoners in prison and them that sit in darkness. Yeah.
Oh, the Watchers.
Shout out to Enoch.
Yep. I am the Lord, that is my name, and my glory will I not give to another, neither my praise to graven images. Behold!
Behold!
Behold.
The former things are come to pass, and new things do I declare. Before they spring forth, I tell you of them.
And the thing is, I've been definitely considering doing a whole thing on the servant, for a while now. I just didn't
because
really
it's a really vague and
yeah, exactly. So some people, Cyrus, other people, Israel, Altar. Actually, I'm reading over this in Altar. Altar thinks it's Israel, and then this guy thinks it's Moses. I wonder what Westerman thinks.
Well, now we're getting into that hymn that you mentioned before. Sing unto the Lord a new song, and his praise from the end of the earth, ye that go down to the sea, and all that is therein, the isles and the inhabitants thereof. This is a familiar line. Sing unto the Lord a new song. It's happened before.
Yeah, and the thing is, I think the other song that said that wasn't new. It was an amalgam of other songs.
Yeah, pretty bad.
Least new thing in song.
Yeah.
Let the wilderness and the cities thereof lift up their voice, the villages that Kedar doth inhabit. Let the inhabitants of the rock sing. Let them shout from the top of the mountains. Let them give glory unto the Lord and declare his praise in the islands. The Lord shall go forth as a mighty man. He shall stir up jealousy like a man of war. He shall cry, yea, roar. He shall prevail against his enemies. I have long time holden my peace. I have been still and refrained myself. Now I will cry like a travailing woman. I will destroy and devour at once. I will make waste mountains and hills, and dry up all their herbs. And I will make the rivers islands, and I will dry up the pools. And I will bring the blind by a way that they knew not. I will lead them in paths that they have not known. I will make darkness light before them, and do crooked things straight. These things will I do unto them, and not forsake them. So there's your one Jesus reference, right? Making the blind able to see again. You know,
Oh, well,
making darkness light before them.
Yeah, but that thing has been used so much.
Yeah, it has. But that's
Like, giving someone sight is just a very basic, incredible thing.
yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna say it's
a basic, incredible.
Yes,
thing.
I know how that came out.
That's a tier 1 miracle, not like S tier or anything. Come
Right,
on.
like it's overused is what I'm saying.
Mm.
Like, yeah, you want to show someone you're powerful, yeah, okay, make somebody see again. Yeah, that is incredible, yes, but we've seen it so many times it has lost its incredibleness.
Yeah. So do these things. They shall be turned back. They shall be greatly ashamed that trust in graven images, that say to the molten images, ye are gods. Hear ye deaf, and look ye blind, that ye may see. Who is blind but my servant? Or deaf as my messenger that I sent? Who is blind as he that is perfect, and blind as the Lord's servant? Seeing many things, but thou observest not. Opening the ears, but he heareth not. The Lord is well pleased for his righteousness' sake. He will magnify the law and make it honorable. But This is a people robbed and spoiled. They're all of them snared in holes, and they are hid in prison houses. They are for a prey, and none delivereth, for a spoil, and none saith restore. Who among you will give ear to this? Who will hearken and hear for the time to come? Who gave Jacob for a spoil, and Israel to the robbers? Did not the Lord, he against whom we have sinned? For they would not walk in his ways, neither were they obedient unto his law. Therefore he hath poured upon him the fury of his anger, and the strength of battle, and it hath not set him on fire round about, yet he knew not, and it burned him, yet he laid it not to heart. And that's the end of the chapter.
So one small observation can be made about the mode of theological argumentation in this text. Its harsh stringency could hardly be outdone, but in verse 24, one of the key points, as we have seen, Isaiah does not relinquish his solidarity with the people to whom he is speaking. Here, quite unexpectedly, a we. It is not Yahweh, the one against whom we sinned. It is still necessary to defend Isaiah against the charge of a false understanding. Is it still necessary to defend Isaiah against the charge of a false understanding of the law? For we must not and cannot isolate this passage from its context. Because apparently that was a thing.
So
And people were arguing.
Yeah, one thing that I've noticed about Isaiah so far is that there are a lot of references to graven images and how terrible it is. Like more so like
any other
in
thing.
frequency.
Yeah,
Right?
definitely in frequency.
Remember how much
Right.
some guys hated marrying outside of the sex?
Yeah, it's like that.
Yeah, it's that bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is like constant. And I imagine that this would be relevant to someone coming out of exile,
Yeah.
coming from polytheistic areas and into a henotheistic or monotheistic one.
Definitely. Anyways, I can hand you all this stuff.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, here's this. Here's this one for you. And then we got a whole other one here for you. We're going to start with chapter 43, and that's going to be the last chapter for the day. Quite a long show. But you know what? That's okay, because we had a lot to cover today.
Yep, so this is an oracle of salvation.
It's our favorite.
Yep.
I love oracles of salvation.
Yep.
They feel so salvation.
Salvatory, I guess.
Yeah.
Is it Salvatore?
Yes, why not? Let's hop into
This
chapter.
mosaic.
Let's hop into chapter 43 unless you have something to introduce it.
Yeah, so oracles of salvation, such as first Isaiah had given to the king, now become oracles for the ancestor Jacob, Israel, who represents the whole people. Another example of the transforming the older royal cult. This chapter opens with the traditional form, do not fear.
Of course.
The whole of 43, 1 through 7 assumes the Day of Atonement as its setting. A ransom has been given for the people. As a result, those cut off can be gathered in again, and the creation can be renewed. This pattern occurs in Leviticus, where the consequence of sin is being cut off from the people of God. The sinner bears his own guilt and is cut off. Those whose guilt is atoned for can be reintegrated. So this is what we're getting into. But like some of the things we've previously read today, this is like those are a challenge, like they're trials that are occurring, challenging the nations to show their power by declaring the former things and bringing their witnesses. So it's kind of like this.
Another challenge is being put forth.
So apparently there will be witnesses of the nations that come
There better
forward. And then the author in Eerdman starts talking about the Book of Enoch.
Of
So
course.
I'm going to close that.
Yeah.
Shout out to Enoch.
Yeah.
Again.
Go check out our episodes of Friday Apocryphal Podcast on
Yeah.
the Book of Enoch.
Why not? But now, thus says the Lord, he who created you, O Jacob, he who formed you, O Israel. Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And through the rivers, they shall not overwhelm you. When you walk through fire, you shall not be burned, and the flame shall not consume you. Could that be a reference to, I forgot what it was called. The Valley of Ben Hinnom. What else was it called?
It might
Gehenna.
Could be Gehenna.
Where they were
Alter
thrown in
says
fire.
the image of coming out unscathed from extreme dangers speaks to the plight of an audience that has undergone the trauma of exile and captivity. The continuing power of these words of assurance is attested by Shmuel Hanagid, the great 11th century Hebrew poet of Granada, who
Of
was
course.
addressed with this verse in a dream and held it close as a kind of talisman during his dangerous campaigns as commander of Granada's army.
You know, a lot of poetry was definitely used as a talisman.
Yeah, but the recipient of this, I mean, they go on at length in all of these to say that it is the nation as a unit.
Yeah.
It's not the individual Israel or
Right.
Jacob.
For I am the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, your Savior. I give Egypt as your ransom, Cush and Seba in exchange for you. And of course, Cush refers to Ethiopia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in exchange for you. Because you are precious in my eyes and honored, and I love you. I give men in return for you.
Yeah, so those
Peoples in
about
exchange
Cush,
for your life.
about Cush and Sheba and stuff. These are references to Cyrus again.
Okay.
There's also in verse 3,
Yeah. What a loss for God.
Yeah. There's also in verse 3, for I, Yahweh, am your God, the Holy One of Israel, your Savior. These are all-time hallowed formulae known to everyone in Israel. Between them and the substantiation of the perfect one, in the perfect there is a difference. The latter refers to a single act. These, on the other hand, express something which continues an intrinsic relationship between Yahweh and Israel. Juxtaposition exemplifies a basic feature of Old Testament theology. All along the line, a determining factor in the relationship between God and man is the conjunction, and sometimes even the opposition, of an act and a relationship. Each has its necessary place in the history of God's dealings with his chosen people, and the other never completely merges into the other. The declaration, you are mine, is originally a legal formula, the form in which a person declares himself to be the owner of something. The noun clause, I, Yahweh, your God, is the same as that which introduces the first commandment. On the term, the Holy One of Israel, Luther's rendering of the Hebrew word, Mosiah, as thy Savior, gives the sense of the Hebrew. Volz remarks, in Deutero-Isaiah, the word Mosiah becomes almost a proper noun. The formula, I am with you, with which we are best acquainted in the Joseph stories, dates back to Israel's very earliest days and is even found in Sumerian texts. In these, a god who is lord of a particular region uses the formula to declare that he will protect someone who intends to travel there. So there's some references, linguistic references in there that we might not have gotten otherwise.
Fear not, for I am with you. I will bring your offspring from the east, and from the west I will gather you. I will say to the north, give up, and to the south, do not withhold. Bring my sons from afar and my daughters from the end of the earth. Everyone who is called by my name, whom I created for my glory, whom I formed and made.
Yeah, so these directions, attempts to give these lines a set of precise historical reference are misplaced. It's true that these were diaspora communities, not only in Mesopotamia to the east, but also in Egypt and elsewhere. But the point of invoking the 4 points of the compass is the sweep of poetic hyperbole. Wherever God's people have been scattered, even at the ends of the earth, he will now gather them in.
Bring out the people who are blind, yet have eyes. Bring those guys out. Could you believe they have eyes?
Yeah, so
man.
this is a new section.
Who are deaf,
in the
yet
text.
have ears. Yeah, I do see it's a new section. It's just divided that way. Yeah, can you believe some deaf people have ears?
These are things that popped up earlier, is the blind. And
Right.
the deaf. So it's a theme that he's going to stick with.
All the nations gather together, and the peoples assemble. Who among them can declare this, and show us the former things? Let them bring their witnesses to prove them right, and let them hear and say, it is true. So back to the whole trial thing?
Yeah, it's back to this divination thing. The question put to the other gods is, who among you declares this? Things to come. The proof of divinity, therefore, is that a God conducts his people through history on a way which it can tread with confidence, because words which he uttered had shown both the direction to be taken and the end in view. And tell us the former things. Again, the prophet's thinking of a connection between a word and its fulfillment, and the gods are asked whether they can produce evidence of such a connection in the past. If they are, in fact, in a position to do so, and they're called upon to produce witnesses to attest to it, such evidence must be deferred to. In this legal process, the evidence under consideration consists of objective facts, which then the other side, too, that is Yahweh and Israel, are bound to listen to and allow that it is true.
So yeah, the whole trial scene is we're in the midst of that now.
Mm-hmm.
So, you are my witnesses, declares the Lord, and my servant whom I have chosen, that you may know and believe me and understand that I am he. That's a weird verse.
Mm-hmm.
So is he...
That was verse 10?
Yeah, verse 10.
God...
Okay, so I am he as in like another identification.
Oh, no. When it says I am he, it can also be translated I am the one.
Okay, so that would make sense as in like I am the only God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Before me no God was formed, nor shall there be any after me. I am the Lord, and besides me there is no Savior. I declared and saved and proclaimed when there was no strange God among you, and you are my witnesses, declares the Lord, and I am God. So, yeah, he's very angry that his worship of him is kind of fading out at this point. And he's like, I was around the whole time. They're not real. Those gods are fake, and you fell for it. There's no God before me, all that good stuff.
Yeah, before me no God was formed, and after me there will be none. That is the monotheistic formulation in succinct form. The Yahweh religion has always insisted on the sole worship of its God. That is also the core of the first commandment in the Decalogue. There were other gods for other peoples. About that, there was no question. At this stage, therefore, the word monolatry should be used. No, it's monolatry. Monolatry.
Monolatry.
Yeah. Should be used for the worship of the one God. The ineffectualness of the foreign gods is already one of Jeremiah's themes. Now the actual existence of other gods is denied from the very outset.
So
also the
by the way,
am Yahweh or
monolatry,
I am the Lord.
It is it's the same thing as henotheism.
Yeah.
So,
but this I am the Lord is very common in the Old Testament, and it seems to follow statements made by God.
You know, God, I think, doth thou protest too much?
Mhm.
Also, henceforth I am he. There is none who can deliver from my hand. I work, and who can turn it back? Nobody can.
Mhm.
Thus says the Lord, your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. For your sake, I send to Babylon and bring them all down as fugitives, even the Chaldeans in the ships in which they rejoice. Getting them at the height of their luxury, I suppose.
These verses here, 14 through 15, the text has been corrupted in the process of transmission.
Of
Its
course.
essentials can be reconstructed. The name Babylon is explicitly mentioned here. So,
That's something.
yeah, that's something.
I am the Lord, your Holy One, the Creator of Israel, your King. Thus says the Lord, who makes a way in the sea, a path in the mighty waters, who brings forth chariot and horse, army and warrior. They lie down, they cannot rise. They are extinguished, quenched like a wick. I like that. Quenched like a wick. Although the horseman thing, of course, call back to the war imagery of Yahweh.
Yeah.
Remember not the former things, nor consider the things of old. Behold!
Behold!
Behold.
I am doing this. I am doing a new thing. I don't think you are.
Yeah,
now
that
it's
Deutero-Isaiah should so turn against former things has continually caused astonishment. For hardly any other prophetic writing appeals so strongly to tradition.
right.
How can
like-
we explain this contradiction?
Yeah. That's a very good point.
Trying to do
Actually,
something new by holding to tradition harder than ever before.
yeah, pretty much.
One conclusion, one important factor seems to me to be that Deutero-Isaiah works with interlocking arguments. One conclusion leads to a counter-argument, which is then confuted so that the next conclusion follows. In this process, new aspects can lead to the repeal of a previous conclusion. But that conclusion does not thereby lose its value on the earlier levels of the argument. Deutero-Isaiah does not develop any system of theological declarations that are generally applicable, irrespective of their content or context. His emphasis varies in different argumentative complexes in the dispute with varying counterpositions to the point when his individual statements are apparently mutually contradictory.
So anyways, behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. And now we're back to the whole nature imagery. We have we have jackals and beasts coming up again. So the wild beasts will honor me, the jackals and the ostriches. For I give water in the wilderness, rivers in the desert, to give drink to my chosen people, except for that time he didn't want them to have drinks. Allah, Moses. The people whom I formed for myself, that they might declare my praise. Yet you did not call upon me, O Jacob, but you have been weary of me, O Israel. You have not brought me your sheep for burnt offerings, or honored me with your sacrifices. I have not burdened you with offerings, or wearied you with frankincense. Interesting verse there.
People offer sacrifices mechanically while persisting in acts of turpitude.
Ah, so they are fools.
Yes, fools.
Yeah. You have not brought me sweet cane with money.
Yeah, so this kana mentioned as an element of the incense used in the temple cult and also some of the fragrances used in the Song of Songs.
But money, where's my money? Did you bring me my money?
Where's my money?
Ah. Oh, no. or satisfied me with the fat of your sacrifices. And as we all know, God really appreciates that. He loves the smell of savory meat.
Yeah, he's really into fat. In fact, in Jubilees, they had all those details about how you're supposed to cook the fat off one side, cook the fat off another side.
Yeah.
Then you got to cook the fat off the edges, too.
Yeah. But you have burdened me with your sins. You have wearied me with your iniquities. Oof.
Yeah.
Just throwing that in there. It's like you haven't done any of this stuff, but you know what you did do? You hurt me. That's what you did.
Yeah.
I am he who bolts out your transgressions for my own sake, and I will not remember your sins. I think he will.
This declaration of absolute remission of sins contradicts the castigation in the verses that precede and follow it.
Yeah.
Conceivably, an editor introduced this line in an effort to mitigate the harshness of the condemnation. The contrast between I do not recall and immediately following help me recall might signal such an editorial effort.
Okay. That actually does make sense. Put me in remembrance. Let us argue together. Set forth your case that you may be proved right. Your first father sinned, and your mediators transgressed against me. Therefore, I will profane the princes of the sanctuary and deliver Jacob to utter destruction and Israel to reviling. So that is the end of the chapter, but I also want to point out that he doesn't, like, I guess the only reason he's saving Israel is for his own sake now. Not for their sake. So it's not for the sake of, your servant David or whatever.
And the reference to the first father probably isn't Abraham. It just
Adam?
means
Probably.
as far back as can be recalled, your people have offended.
Or Adam, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, it could be Adam.
As
sure.
far back as people can recall.
Yeah, exactly. Like you'd think maybe it's that. That's my guess. I didn't think Abraham. I thought Adam.
Yeah. Adam is probably
Abraham.
more accurate. No, this is in verse 27.
Adam Braham.
Right.
Yeah, that is. No, that's that is verse 27. Yeah.
It doesn't say about anything in the Old Testament library, but
in the
maybe
Westermans.
Forefather Jacob, right? Proved in verses 22 through 24. Where
That was
he's
earlier.
chastising Jacob, the first father, the forefather.
So
who is Israel, right?
Yeah.
So, the first father of Israel.
Gotcha. Okay. So I guess it would be all of Israel then.
Yeah, the verdict is that Jacob/Israel's downfall is due to the action of those who rule over it. Act and destiny belong together. It's not that a somber fate has simply overtaken Jacob/Israel. Yahweh, its God, has brought about this fate himself.
Yeah, so that would be in line with the stuff we got from Kings, for example.
Yeah. And of course, the deterministic nature of much of the Bible overall.
Yeah. Although that is the end of the readings for the day. If you guys enjoyed the stream, drop a like, subscribe if you haven't.
Pretty long stream today.
Yeah, but we covered a whole lot of stuff.
Yep, covered a whole lot
in quite a
Isaiah.
good bit of detail. Yeah.
Yep. We're not going to be in Isaiah forever.
No, we are not.
There's we're about halfway through, right?
Yeah, we're getting there. Yeah.
Or we're even a little over halfway through.
Yeah, the halfway point was
There's
the beginning of
66
this episode. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, Jeremiah looks like after. Or
Well-
did I skip a short one?
Oh, after Isaiah.
Yeah, we're gonna be in Jeremiah,
Yeah, we're
and
gonna
that
be
I
in
think
Jeremiah.
is the longest one technically.
Jeremiah is
Longest book.
pretty long. Yeah.
Either way, so thanks for joining us, everyone.
Yeah.
Hope
if
you
enjoyed the
enjoyed it.
stream today. Check us out on Twitter and Facebook if you don't want to spend money. And if you do want to spend money, you can check out our Teespring. You can check out our Amazon wish list where we got a whole bunch of books to use as sources.
Whole lot of books.
And you can also check out our Patreon, because on our Patreon, you can get access to all of our scripts. You can become a member of this show.
Yeah, you could do that. You could get shirts.
You could get shirts, t-shirt giveaway. You could get Lawrence's book. You could get future books that we self-published. You could get in our patron hangouts.
Yeah, you could do a lot of stuff. So that's up to you. Consider checking out the Patreon. And yeah, we talked about the wish list and all the cool stuff on there.
So
and
so
our
far,
Patreon.
What do you prefer, first or second Isaiah?
Second Isaiah.
There's a lot more to talk about.
The second Isaiah is just way better. First Isaiah was woe to this nation. Woe to that nation.
Whoa!
Yeah, that was almost the entirety of First Isaiah. Yeah, so not too much there. Although, here's some other stuff that we have coming up. So a friend of mine, and I know you already have a copy, but a friend of mine also gave us the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
And what was the
Church of Underwear Magic?
Yes, Church of Underwear Magic. Yes, that is the name for the show that we will have when we talk about the Book of Mormon.
Eventually.
Yeah.
I mean, I had mentioned maybe doing it on Friday Apocryphal Podcast, but it's not that long,
I mean, it's
long.
It's a little long. It's longer than, what we would usually cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's longer than Jubilees, that's for sure.
Another testament of Jesus
Yeah,
Christ.
yeah.
And, it's not going to be relevant until we talk about Jesus anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
But
we'll mix it in when we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will cover the Book of Mormon at some point.
And
Maybe.
the Quran isn't too long, so.
Yeah.
Whenever
Maybe.
that's finished, we'll move on to the next one, I guess.
Yeah.
Either way, I think that's
that's it.
stuff.
We will
see you on Friday and Sunday. Yeah, next week, whatever this thing
Possibly Saturday,
sucks
Sunday.
and has to be